Welcome back to Atlanta Diaries. I'm your host, Enma Popley. Thank you for joining me. In Atlanta Diaries, we celebrate unique and inspiring stories of breakthrough women to help future generations create their own. If you want to know more about Atlanta or listen to more episodes, you can visit my website www.enmapopley.com. You can also share feedback or suggestions there. My guest today is Archana Chandra. Archana is the board member and CEO of Vakeel Foundation, one of the oldest and largest NGOs serving those impacted by intellectual disabilities. Archana also serves on the board of A.T.E.Chandra Foundation, which focuses on rural development and capacity building in the social sector. Archana and her husband Amit were named by Forbes on Asia's Heroes of Philanthropy list in 2016, and they were also awarded the Corporate Citizens of the Year award by the All India Management Association in 2017. Today's conversation is really special. Archana and I met at a chance social gathering almost 10 years ago, and ever since, this acquaintance evolved into a colleague, a very dear friend, and a wonderful sounding board. Archana is an inspiring and empowering leader with a lot of gravitas, and I think the future generation will benefit immensely from our conversation as they find their own greatness. Hi, Archana. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Enma. Thank you for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure and delight to be chatting with you.
Awesome. I'm so excited for this conversation. For the benefit of the listeners, Archana and I work very closely at Vakeel, an organization which is now very close to my heart. And of course, Archana goes a long way. Why don't we start with that? Tell us a little bit about Vakeel and your journey thus far.
Sure, Enma. So I had a very regular, routine, simple, normal childhood. I'm an only child and I was born a little late to my parents. So contrary to popular belief, I was not spoiled. In fact, my parents were so worried that I would be spoiled that I think they went to the other end of the spectrum. But nonetheless, I think I had a very uneventful but nice, secure, fun childhood. While growing up, my father was one of the first Indians, I think, to head an American company. So he was, very disciplined by nature. And that was really how I was brought up as well, right? And in all facets of my life. So whether it is physical, where you wake up on time, do some sort of exercise every day, have a balanced meal, etc. But I think also emotionally and mentally, because I still have my dad's words echoing in my ears very often when he says, nothing should make you too happy and nothing should make you too sad. Everything in life should be taken in a very balanced manner. So that was something that I really grew up listening to. And the other thing that he used to tell me very often is, don't let your happiness or unhappiness really come from what somebody else says or does not say. So be very, again, internally resilient and reliant. And I think it is with this lens that both my parents ensured that, I knew how to take care of myself at all levels. So whether it was in the kitchen, learning to drive, making sure you have a career so that you're financially independent, was things that were very early on part of the learning and nurturing environment in my house. I went on to actually get my first job as soon as I graduated with the Times of India group. That was the year that both Sushmita Sen and Aishwarya Rai became Miss Universe and Miss World. And of course, we strutted around like we had won those titles. And they were great fun years, lots of glamour, lots of big events, lots of learning. In fact, Enma, I smile when I think back that, when Aishwarya Rai came back after winning the Miss World crown, she had done a victory lap. And I was on that chariot with her, waving like, oh my God, look who I am. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of glamour. And then I moved on to a US-based database company called Informix. where the fun continued, but in a different way because there was international travel, there was a great paycheck hitting my account, and by all accounts, I felt my career was on a great path. Around the year 2000, a series of events happened in my personal life where my dad was diagnosed with cancer and we lost him honestly within a month. We were totally not prepared for that. And being an only child, I think it hit me really hard. At the same time, Informix, the company that I was working for in the US, got bought over by IBM and they decided to wind down their India operations. So for no fault of mine, I found myself jobless one morning. And it was also around this time that my husband Amit and I were actually trying to have a family. And we went through a series of miscarriages. In fact, we had 2 miscarriages. The third baby was born still. And I think it was around this time that I felt like I had hit rock bottom. And I started asking myself, why is all of this happening to me? And what really is the purpose of my life? It was at this time actually that I used to chat with a really dear friend, Sue, who's an American, and she used to work with an NGO called Archana Foundation, which works for the education of children from the slum community. And Sue used to every day have a spring in her step and a smile on her face and share stories from the community. And it used to amaze me how this American who does not even fluent in Hindi is going into the community and working with the kids over there to discuss their future. Nonetheless, I was inspired by her to actually come to Archana Foundation, where I met the founder, Shaheen Mistry, and I absolutely loved what I saw and decided to volunteer there. So I spent nearly 2 years at Archana Foundation, and I think that was my place for baptism by fire in the not-for-profit sector, because I had so many misconceptions when I came in, thinking, you come to the not-for-profit sector, you're going to change the world. In fact, I had to go through so much of unlearning and relearning, as well as so many things that you take for granted in the for-profit space are things that don't exist in the social sector. I'll give you a really simple example. In Informix, we all used to have great Wi-Fi and a laptop of our own. When I came to Archana, the Wi-Fi was sketchy and we had to share. 4 people had to share a computer. So I spent 2 years at the Archana Foundation and then took a small break to have my daughter, Annika. And again, at a social function, I met another really dear friend, Anita Pandol, who was talking very animatedly to me about a cause that was really dear and special to her, which was the Vakeel Foundation. And Anita has been coming to Vakeel since she was a child from JB Pettit School. So she was telling me how I must come and see these children, see the campus, and I will absolutely love it. And she was telling me basically that the Vakeel Foundation is the oldest and largest institute working with children and adults who are intellectually challenged and all the different things, wonderful things that they do, for them on this campus. And I still remember Emma thinking in my head while I was politely nodding to Anita, like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? I don't even understand this space completely. How am I going to interact with these kids? What am I even going to say to them? So I was really, really hesitant to actually come here. But for anybody who knows Anita, it's almost impossible to say no to her. And literally the next morning, she showed up under my building, put me in her car, and brought me to the Vakeel Foundation.
Archana, you're a volunteer CEO for over 8 years. What drives you to wake up at 6 in the morning and go through the entire day? Sometimes I know sleep at 10 o'clock as you and I talk across continents. So what really keeps you going? What drives you to do this?
Well, I think, Enma, like I mentioned, I was really skeptical and nervous to come here. But once I came through the gates of the Vakeel Foundation and I went into the classrooms and I met the kids, their unconditional love and just the positive energy on the campus got my heart engaged, right? But because of the way I had been trained thus far, I went back to look for data. First of all, it was almost close to impossible to find any reliable data. But when we did come across something to talk to or work with, the data told us that 2% of our population has intellectual disability. And that's when I was like, 2% is, when you just say it as a number, as a percentage, doesn't sound that much. But when you break it down, Emma, it's like 1 in 50. And if the numbers are so high, I honestly couldn't remember the last time I had seen any of these people in any of the public spaces I visit, whether it's a theater or a mall or even a wedding. And I think that is when my head got engaged. And now, with both my heart and my head engaged, I decided to stay and actually spend my time and give off whatever learnings and expertise I had to a cause and a space that was so underserved that I thought could really do with some spotlight.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I know you had very big shoes to fill in when you moved to Vakeel. You started your journey as a volunteer, and then you took on, roles where they needed you. And then from there, one fine day, the board just said, come on, Archana, now you're going to head the organization. Like, how did you fill in those big shoes? What kind of challenges came your way? Let's talk a little bit about that journey.
So I think Mrs. Shroff was super gracious. When I came in, she allowed me to find my own feet. She gave me the space. And at the same time, she nurtured and taught me everything that I know today. So in fact, her designation at that time was to be administrative director. And she made me joint administrative director. And she literally gave me a chair to sit by her side and sit in on all meetings and see how she conducted, meetings with parents, with children, with staff, etc. So that's really how I learned. She mentored, guided, nurtured, and trained me to be who I am today. Emma, we are the most amazing organization, doing the most amazing work. We have over 700 students from the ages of 3 to 50 on our Mumbai campus. And we have 2 other campuses in Devlali and Talegaon, doing the most incredible work for children with intellectual disability and multiple disabilities. But by virtue of the way the organization had grown organically over the years, and Mrs. Shroff used to actually say this to me, Archana, we serve everyone from the womb to the tomb. While I think that's a great sentiment, it's a very noble sentiment, I think it's very hard to be excellent at everything. So that was one of our biggest challenges in 2013. And the second one was, of course, funding. Right? Mrs. Shroff had the most amazing ability where she would pick up the phone and say, hello, Enma, mane 5 lakh moklao. And the next day, Enma was sending her this check for 5 lakh. No tedious forms were being filled. Not much questions were asked. And life got on. Unfortunately for us, we didn't know these Enmas. So, we were struggling even with the finances. This is in spite of the fact that actually we've been getting a government grant for over 60 years for the education vertical that we run. These were the 2 biggest challenges that we had in 2013. And I think as a team, leadership team, board, as well as members from the family, we went back to the drawing board and said, what is our core competency? What are we really good at? Let's identify those and then build on those and wind down everything that is non-core for us. So I'll give you an example over here. We had a laboratory on our campus because earlier on, the parents would have come and said to Mrs. Vakeel that, when we're doing an assessment for the child, apart from what the doctors and the therapists are assessing, we also need blood work. And for that, I have to take my child to the hospital, and he just doesn't allow a strange nurse to, draw blood from him. So can we have a laboratory on our campus? But in 2013, we were asking ourselves the question that, the landscape had changed. If we wanted to continue keeping the laboratory, either we'd have to invest in it and make it state of the art, or then at that point, we decided to wind it down and partner with the other laboratories that had emerged. So we made a lot of changes like this. I have to admit that it was probably one of the toughest phases again of my life. And I have to say, at this time, what I did was I attended a program at the Harvard Business School. in Boston, which was called Strategic Perspectives in the Not-for-Profit Space, which really helped me tremendously. I still remember the two key takeaways that I had from that program helped shape me in different ways. So one of the, as you know, the Harvard model is teaching through case studies. There was a case study that they did on the Shackleton case study. And that case study actually helped me figure out what kind of a leadership style I was going to have, because I had never led such a large organization before. And the second one, I still remember there was a professor who walked into our class one day, Professor Fay, and she said, "This is a classroom which has leaders from the social sector, a space where you want to do everything for everybody and be everything to everybody. But please remember, you cannot be excellent at everything. And therefore, please be very clear what you will do, but be equally clear about what you will not do and be unapologetic about it." I think that last sentence of "and be unapologetic about it" was what helped me tremendously from all the self-guilt and self-questioning that I was doing as we were winding down so many departments.
This is very interesting when you had to wind down so many sections, initiatives started by Mrs. Vakeel. You must have got a pushback from the team. You must have got a pushback from the board. You must have got a pushback from, I'm sure, other stakeholders. How did you win credibility or trust amongst all these different stakeholders?
What a great question, Enma. I was the villain of the moment, right? The parents were like, we had been promised A, B, C, D, E, and now you're saying you're going to put in a retirement age. At Vakeel, we didn't have a retirement age. So we had students who were 70 years and above who were unable to actually even get into some of our classrooms, unable to avail of any of the rehab services that we were providing. They needed more nursing and medical care, which we were not designed to provide. And so there was also a waiting list of younger kids who wanted to come in. So we had no choice but to bring in a retirement age. And we got such a pushback from parents on this retirement age. So we were not looked at favorably by parents. In our space of intellectual disability, there is no standardized curriculum. In ours, there's only a framework that we had helped create with the government many, many years ago. So every teacher was kind of writing her own lesson plans and working with that, creating her own teaching learning material. So we said, chalo, let's document this and standardize it across classrooms so that, there's a minimum bar that every child gets. So we told our teachers, just write it down, build out your lesson plan. So they were like, we've been doing this for 30 years. We know how to do it. You don't have to tell us to document it. So was clearly not popular with the staff. So it was a tough phase. I mean, it was tough to the point where, a group of our parents threatened to take us to court. And when we didn't relent, they actually took us to court. And I think over here, the clarity of the why are we doing what we are doing was really what kept us going. We're trying to build an institution that will outlast an individual, and we're trying to up the bar in every facet of intervention that we're providing. And this why, I think we articulated over and over again, whether it was to a parent, whether it was to a staff member, whether it was to a donor, we just kept repeating. And I think the other one was just empathy. So this is really I don't think it's funny, but this is a true scene that played out, right? Where one of my dearest colleagues, Neha Shah, who literally walked this journey with me, she's been with us for over 9 years and is just becoming our chief operating officer. She and I were the ones who were walking into the Bombay court, right? And we're walking there and there are these giant offices and both of us are clueless in terms of where are we supposed to go. And Neha looks at me and she says, "Archana, what are we doing?" I had first time in my life, and she this like this awe in her voice when she was talking to me. She said, "This is the first time I'm getting to walk inside a court. Otherwise, I've only seen these structures in movies." And we looked at each other and we started laughing. Apart from the why and understanding the why, I think the other thing is humor, not taking yourself or the situation to the point where it breaks you, right? Seeing the lightness in it. And it was funny, Enma, because when we couldn't find it, there were actually our parents only who had taken us, who we were meeting in court, who were telling us, "Madam, idhar aiye, this is the room," right? And we walked into the judge's chambers and they gave their point. We gave our point, which was basically, look, these children have received so many years of intervention and assistance from Jai Vakeel. Today, they're not in a position to benefit from it. And we're not in a position to do any more for them, which is why we're happy to work with the parents to rehabilitate them at home and give the same benefit to younger kids who otherwise will not get it. So the parents and us eventually came to a settlement amongst ourselves, and the whole matter was not even admitted in court. So lots of learning. And again, over here, I think the biggest one was that to carry people along. And I think for each one of the leadership team to understand that we were all on the same side. We were not on opposing sides. And if you need to get into a courtroom just to understand that better, so be it. But that doesn't mean you're on opposite sides.
I want to double click on this and maybe shift gears a little bit. So you and I have met socially for the first time, but the very next day I got a call from you. So what triggered that call?
When we talked about when I thought I had hit my rock bottom in life, that's when I found my spiritual school and my guru, Master Chwakopsui. He and the school saved me, healed me, and grounded me. And one of the things that come from my school is whatever you're doing, be the best at it. There are many learnings, many teachings that we have, but this is one of them. And this is something that I honestly took to heart, right? So even when I'm spending my time at Jai Vakeel, we have to be giving our kids the best that we possibly can, right? Just because we're an NGO, jitna kiya, badiya kiya is not going to happen. Just because 76% of our kids are from the lower socioeconomic strata, giving them the bare minimum is not an option. So being the best at whatever you do. Now that lens basically means you cannot do it all on your own, right? You have to find expertise in people, but also people for whom this cause and this space connects. They're able to resonate with it. I mean, the term that I use is inviting people to Jai Vakeel to make them walk the campus. And then the first question I ask them after their chakkar is, does the place and the cause make your heart sing? And if your answer to that is affirmative, then whatever needs to be done, I know you will do. And that's all that I'm looking for. So when we met, Enma, you put the buzzword out that you do HR. So since I had just taken over an organization with over 250 staff and 700 students, I needed HR help. So that's how I made that first phone call to you to say, hey, and I think those were my words. I said, hey, Enma, I need HR help. Can you help? And your answer to me was, I don't do HR. I do training. And I said, I know, but it's the closest to HR that I know. So why don't you come to Jai Vakeel and visit? Because I was, looking to ask you that question after your chakkar. I have absolutely no qualms in saying that to anybody and everybody that I can find. Because I do believe that only when like-minded people come together towards a common purpose will really magic happen. One person is not moving any needle on their own, no matter how, inspirational or powerful or competent you are.
That's beautiful. Archana, you earlier spoke about how you led a very protective life while your dad gave you these beautiful values. It was a somewhat protected life, right? What kind of a role did Amit play in helping you define your purpose or helping you define your journey thus far?
Amit is a rock star in many ways, in more ways than one. So, Edna, you're right. I was given everything as a child growing up, but I think my father also had this active thought where all of this was geared towards getting me ready for marriage. So at 21, the minute I graduated, I was not allowed to go abroad to study. Even while growing up, I had various opportunities to go abroad as an exchange student. None of that I was allowed. In fact, my deadline at parties was 11 p.m. I was embarrassed to go anywhere because I had to leave just when people were entering and the fun was beginning. But at 21, he said, now it's time to look for boys. And I was like, what are you talking about? But honestly, I didn't have the courage to push back. Fortunately for me, I met Amit. We were introduced by a common friend. We met Enma in January. We were engaged in February and we were married in April of the same year. I was 22 and Amit was 25. He had just completed his MBA and come back to India. I don't think he had any plans for getting married. But, once I told my father, here's this boy that I'd like you to meet, things were out of both our controls. And the next thing we knew, we were married. But in a sense, I think we both grew up together, right? I think getting married to Amit was a little bit like that Monopoly game, get that get out of jail card. I was like on a roll. I was like, I can party till 1:00. I've always had straight hair. And the first thing that I did was went and permed my hair. I looked god awful, but I was thrilled to bits. We've learned a lot. I've learned and discovered my passion for adventure sports. I have done camping in, Yellowstone National Park, which is my all-time favorite. I remember we went up to do that skydiving. And Amit was like, you have to be mad. And I was like, no, this is awesome. I was on such a high. So I discovered many, many things to my personality. We had some many, many, many fun experiences like that. But he's always allowed me to A, be my own person, but B, actually helped to push me out of my comfort zone so that learning and growth happens. Yeah, in fact, when I found my spiritual school, Pranic Healing, Amit was also going through his own internal struggles and dilemmas. And he is very, very grounded with and to Guru Nanak, right? And one of the teachings over there is basically earn your living through good means and then give it away and share. It was also around this one time that we read this book called The Billionaire Who Wasn't, the story of Chuck Feeney, and how he built the entire duty-free from scratch and then as an anonymous donor, gave it all away. And I think that book deeply inspired both of us. But Amit was the one who was called to action faster than me, right? We had many, many conversations where he said, why don't we define what our needs are and give away the rest? And I was like, what a great idea, theoretically. How do you put a number down practically? I don't know. And I must admit, the process was much easier for Amit. He narrowed down all his belongings from multiple cupboards to a single cupboard. And till date, he lives out of a single cupboard. If you buy him one new shirt, he will give away one from his existing lot. So for him, it was very easy. I have to admit, it wasn't that easy for me, Enma. And I told him that. I said, look, I've not had a childhood where I could go abroad for holidays as often as I wanted. I didn't want for anything, but there was not extra money to go around, right? And Amit and I have both worked our way up to where we are today. When we got married, we had no house to live in. Amit drove a car, which if he shut, wouldn't start. And we spent some of our first years actually living as paying guests because we didn't have the money. And every time he got a promotion, we'd move to a one-bedroom house or a, bigger house, etc., etc. So when we were having this conversation, I was not ready to give up all the material comforts that I was now seeing or having access to. So I was far more hesitant, and I told him, I said, Amit, the next time I want an international holiday, I don't want to feel guilty about it, right? But he stayed the course with me. He didn't push, but he said, fine. So still, let's put the number down. And we actually got professional help. We got somebody to work with us to actually create that number so it would solve for medical contingencies, child education, our old age, etc., etc. But we did manage to put that number down. And I think full credit to Amit on that. And that's how today we're able to define our needs and give away the rest, only to realize that actually giving away responsibility is a bigger responsibility and a harder job to do, sometimes than even earning it. So, yeah, he's been an amazing partner to 29-year journey that we've had together. In fact, and I'm going to say this honestly, when I switched from the corporate world to the not-for-profit space, and I used to work at both Akanksha and Vakeel, my mother, as well as my mother-in-law, really approached the social sector as a place where you go to spend some time. It was not taken seriously like a career or, a profession. And even though I was running Vakeel, if somebody was coming for lunch, they were like, why are you not staying home for lunch? And I actually had to have Amit explain to both of them that this was a career and not just somewhere that I go to spend some amount of time.
This is really beautiful. And actually, when you talk about this last part, it's so relatable. There are a large number of volunteers. So have you been mindful about sharing this journey with your volunteers, and how then do you engage them and help them address the same topics when they go back home? Maybe this is a good call to action to get inspired that you can have a career without bringing money on the table.
I have never thought about mindfully putting that out, Enma. I didn't see if there was any value in sharing it with others. So that's the reason I've not put it out. But, well, I'm glad it came up in this conversation then.
There you go. That's the coaching hat, right?
Yeah. Oh, my God, the coaching hat, Enma. I have to, again, share this with you, right? I'm inherently an introvert. I would love it if you just let me be by myself and if I could spend the rest of my life as a wallflower. And when I took on the leadership role at Vakeel, it was all actually inward facing, right? We had to get our house in order. We had to do whatever we had to do, which was inward facing. And I was thrilled a bit. I'm happy to constantly push myself out of my comfort zone. So I was really okay with this leadership role that I was doing till 2018, 2019, right? When we said, hey, nobody even understands intellectual disability kya hai? What are our challenges? And if people don't understand it, how are they going to be, more aware, sensitized, and therefore accepting and inclusive of our students? And that's when I realized I had to start playing somewhat of an external role as well, right? Sharing the Vakeel story, sharing my story. I was like, I'm going to leave because I don't want to do this. It was at this time that I was talking to another friend, and she said, Archana, I'd like you to meet somebody who's a coach, and she will help you find someone who can work with you. And in my head, I'm thinking, sure. Like I said, I'm always happy to try something new. And that's how I went to meet Priya. And she decided to take me on. And what she said to me was so powerful, Enma. She helped me separate Archana, the individual, with her likes and dislikes and her preferences, with Archana, the CEO of Vakeel Foundation, and the needs and requirements of that role. And she said to me very clearly, she said, if you don't want to do it, then step aside so somebody else can do it so that Vakeel doesn't suffer. Because you say, you're so close to Vakeel and you want what's best for it. And if you're okay to do that, then I'm happy to work with you to make it happen. And sitting there in front of her, I said, help me do it. And I think that perspective changed how I viewed it. It became less about me and again about that cause or space that's larger than an individual. And she didn't leave me there, Enma. She held my hand till it happened. And I think I owe her a lot to actually even be having this conversation with you when I'm able to put it out like this. So I think coaches, mentors are just game changers for people who want to change but don't know how.
We've spoken about your challenges, we've spoken about how you've navigated all these. You also spoke about humor and fun, right? You also spoke about, there's a smile on your face, every morning you wake up really wanting to go to Vakeel and doing your bit. What then is one of your biggest joys as a leader? And we haven't really spoken about your leadership style, your leadership journey. So let's start with what's your biggest joy as a leader?
So I think leadership style-wise, Enma, Tahim did this to me. When I was at the Archana Foundation, I had come in to do a little bit of events, a little bit of fundraising, a little bit of communication, because that's what I knew how to do. And she walked up to me one day and she said, hey, the lady who's heading HR for us is leaving. So why don't you do HR? And I stared at her and I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about HR. And she's like, no, you're good with people and the rest you'll figure out. And she turned around and left. And that was the end of the conversation. And it worked, right? I figured it out. I knew nothing, but I found a Cerebrus, which is one of the best HR agencies. And I went there and I said, help. And they helped and we figured it out. And I think that stuck with me. So even now at Vakeel, I think I'm looking to build a group of people who are excited about the cause, the space. Like I said, it has to resonate with them at a heart level. And I do believe that each one of us comes with some fantastic skill, expertise, experience. And therefore, once you're on board, I think I do this unconsciously now where I throw you at the deep end. And if you swim, that's it. You're stuck for life. And I have no desire to micromanage you or line item wise lead you. Then we just, as a team, come to the drawing board to say, what is our goal? Have that audacious goal, articulate the why of it. And then each one takes their little vertical and figures out how to run it so that it is totally aligned with and comes together for my child and family, who's at the center of everything that we do. And of course, while doing that, Enma, we have so much fun because we constantly push ourselves out of our comfort zone. Our targets and bars are self-imposed and high, and we allow ourselves to fail. We also allow ourselves to stand on rooftops and scream for help, for support when we need it. And that makes us stronger.
And any specific anecdotes come to your mind when you really felt that you're proud of your team or any joys as a leader?
Oh, so many. I can give you multiple stories per person. I'll give you one or two. So we had Sangeeta, who had over 20 years of running her own business before she came to Vakeel. And we said she will be great for sheltered workshop program, which is basically where the children above 21 make products. So we have 7 different locations. So I just would love to understand what is the profile of all the children as of today, what is each person's level of ability and how much production are they doing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we were like, what a great question, Sangeeta. What a great place to start. Here is the data, all raw data in files. Why don't you start entering that? Because that will turn out to be the database with which you will work. And till date, she said, and she's heading that department. This, of course, is, a 5-6-year-old story. But she says, you guys made me do data entry at a point in my life where I was running my own business. I said, and Sangeeta, today, therefore, you know every single thing there is to know about the child, about the staff, and about the process. So it made you the leader that you are today. Of course, she laughs about it. There's also Neha, who, again, we just got her to walk the campus. She's an engineer and she had no idea, again, what she was going to do here. She started by putting the vocational training section together. Basically, I had started. My learning ground was the skill development center. So I knew that works. So after me, it was Neha. So whatever systems and processes I had put in, I handed it over to her. So that was her baptism by fire. And over the years, she literally was my right-hand person. She walked this journey with me. Wherever there was a vacuum, she jumped in to fill it. She's helped build our technology piece. She has grown from being somebody who likes to work on her own to now managing teams. And we just announced that she's going to be our chief operating officer. So, that's a journey of learning and growth, both individually as well as an organization. That's truly worth celebrating.
Yeah, that's really a very beautiful story, where you've seen the person evolve and you've seen the person deliberately work towards what is expected of her. Archana, you spoke a lot about, how Mrs. Shroff mentored you and you actually mentored Neha to reach where she reached, right? So what does mentorship mean to you, and are you deliberate about it in becoming a mentor or sort of enabling mentoring journeys at Vakeel or outside?
I think one of the first things that I tell people is to be their authentic self. Do not try to be somebody else. Right. And I think that comes again from my own learning with Mrs. Shroff. She was a larger than life personality. She was an extrovert. She entered the room and you knew someone had entered the room, right? She had a booming voice. And when she spoke, everybody listened. In my personal life, Amit has a larger than life persona, right? A little bit like Mrs. Shroff. He enters the room and everyone knows Amit entered the room. And there was a time where I used to just kind of be very happy basking in that. And I used to let him, be the front end in our relationship and in our conversations. And then when I took on the leadership role, I had to also speak. And I realized I have important things to say. It's just that my style of saying them and doing things is very different. And just because it's different doesn't mean it's good or bad. And I think once I accepted that and embraced that, it made me more confident. And so I think this is something that I share with everybody, that everyone's lens, everyone's perspective, and everyone's style is true to them. So own it, embrace it, and take that with you in every conversation that you go. The second one is have a perspective and then have a voice. But when you say that, be very mindful that your perspective is your reality, but the other person's perspective is their reality. So how do you agree to disagree respectfully is, I think, again, at the crux of every conversation that we have, even at Vakeel. Some of our conversations are mad because people come at it from different lenses, from opposing sides, and we're all over the place. But again, I believe both the individual as well as the team, as well as the organization is richer for that. So again, I encourage that in every person that I have a conversation with. Throw yourselves out of your comfort zone, right? Because unless you do that, no learning happens. And when anything bad or difficult happens to you, please never go down the route of pity or why me. Just look at it as what is the learning in it for me? And the minute you come to that scenario, which is not always fun, which is not always good, what is the learning in it for me? I think it takes away the oh my God, pity lens that, otherwise we tend to come to the table with. And the other one is just faith. For me, the biggest thing that keeps me going, keeps me happy, keeps me sane is my faith. So find that source of energy that's totally internal and comes from within.
You also said that your daughter Anika happened at a much later date, and I'm guessing you would have disciplined her like your mom and dad did discipline you, but with the wisdom of hindsight, did you do it any differently from what your parents did?
So I think the first thing is get all the help that you can get. It takes a village to raise a child, and there's a lot of truth in that, right? So solicited the help of my mom, and I think having her at home gave me the comfort of being able to step out every single day. I have a very, very dear friend, Brinda. I'm an only child, so I actually don't have any real siblings, but I have enough friends. And one of them in particular, who I used to joke with, that, when the study schedule comes, we would divide the subjects. And I'd say, Vrinda, the math, physics, science are all yours and the others are mine. So that's on a lighter note. You don't have to do this alone. So that was one of the things. And the other I used to joke is that I have two shifts that I work. One is when Anika's in school from 9 to 4. And then I shut my laptop and come home at 4:30 so that she comes, because I want to be home when she comes. And then we do everything, we play, we do homework, we eat dinner. And then she used to sleep at 9. And at 9:30, my laptop used to open again. And that was my second shift of working. So I think, again, be adaptable, be flexible, have a plan, but make changes, adapt to whatever style works is how I worked earlier. Now, of course, she's much older and has things to do of her own. So the days are more seamlessly one as opposed to fragmented two. And I think even with her, very early on, Emma, I started having the why conversation, right? So if I was telling her to do something, it was more along the lines of why is it important? And I realized in today's generation, telling them to do something because I say so is just not working. She's 17 and a half. She'll be 18 in a couple of months. And I think she says to me that, you talk to me very differently. So whether it is fixing her nighttime curfew or it is about which college you want to apply, I think having the why conversation is very important. And the third thing I would say is that I have learned that I don't need to drive every single initiative from the front. So, for example, when Anika was applying for colleges after her 12th grade, I haven't been to the US to study. I don't understand that space very much. Amit has, and he understands it far better. So I actually left it up to him to drive it. And I think the two of them had a great time doing it. And I didn't try to understand all of it so that I could have my opinions in it. I just sat back, let the two of them drive it, and enjoyed the process. Yeah, it was a good learning for me as well, that I don't have to drive everything from the front.
And looks like that gave a great opportunity for Amit and probably Anika to bond and, create their own little rapport and relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Archana, before I decided to launch Atlanta Diaries, I did this little survey around 300 women across the globe. And I wanted to understand from them what kind of challenges they, see as in their journeys. And some interesting questions and themes came up in that survey. I want to ask you one of those questions and understand how can you answer this. A lot of them said that men simply have to state what's on their mind and women have to convince. Any thoughts, any perspectives?
I have had so many personal experiences of the same. So I couldn't agree more. I'll give you a personal instance as well. So I keep talking about this course that I attended at Harvard Business School. And I cannot tell you how excited I was because it was the first time that I was getting to be inside a classroom. And the professors were fantastic. The case studies were so exciting. I read the case study line by line. I had a perspective on everything. So when I walked into the classroom, I was like raring to go. And then the professor asked questions. Emma, I couldn't raise my hand. All right. I would half-heartedly raise it halfway. And obviously the professor didn't see it, so didn't ask me. I did that 3 times. And then I stopped putting my hand up because in my head, I justified it to myself saying, he's not going to ask me in any case. But at the end of that day, I knew I was having an issue, right? So I went to my brother-in-law who's based in Boston, and I said, you know what? I know my stuff. I have a perspective. In fact, sometimes when the class is finished answering, I still have a perspective that I know would add huge value to the discussion in the class. I'm just unable to say it. Why? And he told me, you are not alone. You are not unique. And he made me watch a video by Amy Cuddy. This is something that I would actually suggest everybody watches. Okay, every woman watches. Her name is Amy, Amycuddy. And she talks about how women in general struggle to put their hand up and share their opinions. And of course, she also talks about how to get over it and why you must do it. So totally hear you and sharing this video that I think everyone must watch.
You're the first guest who came from a not-for-profit space, somebody who's driven completely by passion and doing it altruistically. This has been so interesting and inspiring. Archana, shifting gears a little bit, tell me, as a CEO, did you ever feel it's lonely on the top?
So again, I think these are choices that we make. How lonely am I going to feel? And I think that for me, the answer is no, I didn't. Because I was so happy to ask people of their opinions or perspectives whenever I was not sure about something. And I think here, Enma, you have been such a wonderful co-passenger with me on this journey, right? You came in with your lens on human resources. You agreed to learn and grow with me and the organization on how to do HR over and above being a trainer. And I have valued your human resource lens. You moved from Mumbai to Chandigarh, which is another city in India. You moved to the US, but you have stayed with us, right? And I think every time you grew, you became a coach. You started coaching individuals for us at Vakeel. We read the book $1 Trillion Coach together, and you became a team coach. So the point I'm making, Enma, is that no, I haven't felt lonely at the top because I have had people that I can lean on who I know have the best interest of not just me and my team, but the organization and my child and their family at the center. So finding these people, keeping us close in the huddle is what makes everything so much fun and easy.
Oh my God, this question has brought back so many memories, Archana. Memories of, doing fun stuff together. Memories of reminding ourselves that we're a learning organization. Memories of pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. I mean, honestly, it's been equally fulfilling and rewarding for me as well. Those flights from Chandigarh and then now from the US were always something I look forward to, allocating that 1 week to come to Vakeel. Working on remote is one thing, Archana, but, sort of just coming there in the campus and spending that 1 week just keeps on reminding me of, that I have to just keep on at it. Like, it's not something I want to ever give up. So yeah, you've really brought back some interesting memories. And regarding your perspective on, having a thought partner, having a safe space, having somebody to just speak with, I think makes absolute sense. I say this to everyone that, we all must have somebody who we can just speak with, who can be our safe space, our judgment-free space, So yeah, that's a beautiful perspective. And I just couldn't agree with you more. As we end the conversation, Archana, which has been so interesting and so insightful, what are your parting thoughts for young leaders, young women leaders, as they transition into more challenging roles?
Yes, it is hard to find women in the workforce. And, I recently heard Arundhati Bhattacharya, who used to be the first chairperson of State Bank of India and is now, of course, leading Salesforce. And she said there are 3 inflection points when we lose women in the workforce. The first one is when they have a baby. because there are not enough facilities for them, creches for them, etc. The second one is when their children are in the 10th to 12th grade because they need somebody at home, with all the stress at home. And the third time is when there's somebody elderly in the family who needs nursing care. And women tend to be those caregivers voluntarily because, they just are wired like that, or sometimes just come from a place of no choice or guilt. And I thought that was such a moment of truth when I heard her, right? And I'm tabling it here because I think if younger girls and women are aware of these, they should solve for it, right? And how do we get more women to support each other, to be that mentor, to be that coach, whether it is from the family, whether it is from the workplace, whether it is from your friend circle? I think that is critical. I love, love, love this platform that you've created, Enma, because you bring to the table not just people who've achieved exceptional milestones, but you're bringing in real stories from real people. And I'm sure when people hear them, they will resonate with some message. Something that someone will say will give them the strength to push themselves to be better, do better, and break that glass ceiling. So I think thank you for doing this. It's much needed. It's about time. And I think you're a rock star for doing it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. But quite honestly, this would have never been possible or would not have been half as successful without the support of all the Atlantas and Atlanta Diaries, including yourself. We all see the final destinations, but all these conversations, which have been so vulnerable and authentic and candid, I believe have helped people get a peep into what is below the iceberg. What's the journey thus far? How did they make it possible? And I think listening to these conversations makes people understand that it's normal. We can also do it. And that's what I wanted to solve for through Atlanta Diaries. So I'm actually grateful to all the Atlantas for believing in my wide story, for believing in my vision and walking this journey with me. So thank you very much. And thank you to you also for doing this. Thank you very much for listening. All my guests have brought their most vulnerable selves on Atlanta Diaries. And even if a small segment of these conversations can help champion the journey of one person, it's going to be really worth it. I do have a request for you. Please share this podcast on your social media and with your family and friends. Our society is constantly evolving, and Atlanta Diaries must too. I really appreciate if you can leave your feedback in the form of a review or a rating. These are impactful and rousing stories that need to be shared far and wide. See you next time for another one on Atlanta Diaries.